At first glance, when you look at me, what do you see? You see my skin, the color of sand. You see my full lips, small nose, and my sandy red and brown coarse hair. When people encounter me, most of the time it's with the statement, "You look exotic," or "You're pretty." And then after the soft introduction of compliments comes the hard, hitting question out of burning curiosity. What are you? Where are you from? No, like, where are you really from? What are your parents? Where are they from? Is that a tan? No, but your hair is kinky, so you must be black. Oh, you're mixed. And out of all of these questions, asking my name seems not to be the first, and sometimes not even one of them. This makes me curious. Curious as to why the "what are you" question lingers in the mind for those that we cannot categorize, those who seem to be ethnically ambiguous. Categorization is a part of human nature. We do this with shapes and colors, for instance, and then we do this with people. We want to be able to understand those that are different than us, but without speaking to them. As a multiracial woman, I get the "what are you" question quite often. Ironically, however, getting asked this annoying question at least gives me the opportunity to have an open conversation about race that would not occur otherwise. These are my sisters and I. They also get the "what are you" question a lot. We are each very different people. And interestingly enough, in the past, we have all identified with Black or African American. It hasn't been but within the past few years that we have changed our identification to multiracial. But this is upon the realization that we could, in fact, be both Black and white, two of the most predominant identifications that we associate ourselves with. This is because of our parents. Two different people on two ends of the racial spectrum that instilled a set of values that taught us to embrace both of our cultures that we are very much a part of. I remember that very awkward conversation with my dad when I expressed to him that I only associated with Black. You should have seen his face. One of disappointment, as if I had been neglecting a piece of me by only associating with one ethnicity, one culture. "Why can't you be both?" he asked. And honestly, I wouldn't be able to answer nor understand why I couldn't in fact be both until a few years later, after I'd been educated formally and informally about race and identity. I have also had conversations similarly with my mother. When BET's annual Black Girls Rock award show came on television one year, I asked her, "Mama, do I count? Like, do I get to celebrate being a Black woman even though I'm not fully Black?" And what she said, I will never forget. "Sierra, you are a woman of color. You came from me, a Black woman, and without me, you would not be here. You are no better or any less than Black because you are half white or have light skin. You are indeed both, and you have the right to embrace both of those parts separately as well as together." This journey in finding my identity and who I am persisted with these conversations with my parents. Questions about my identity actually stemmed from surveys like this. The more formally explicit version of the "what are you" question, the version that gets to dodge the conversation about who I am, which cannot be expressed simply by checking Black, or in my case, what is most commonly expressed as bi or multiracial. The problem with this survey is the perpetuation of the one-drop rule. It is not written on the survey, but ever since I'd entered the school system, it had been an unspoken rule that I must check black and to avoid checking the white or Caucasian box. One of the biggest factors as to why I had trouble associating myself with the white racial identity. It was like a forbidden Pandora's box that I was shunned from opening because then people became confused. Like my teacher in the 3rd grade when I asked her if it was okay to check white. I have also been guilty of asking the "what are you" question. In fact, a few years ago, after watching one of my sister's middle school basketball games, I was speaking to one of the referees that had happened to be working her game. And in the middle of glorious basketball conversation, I nervously asked, "Excuse me, sir, but what are you?" He smiled and looked at me. "I am an American," he said. And thinking this was some sort of game, I responded with, "Okay, so what is your race?" He responded with Homo sapien, a human. I asked one question after another until I ran out of questions that I thought were valid. I gave up, and I asked myself, was it really that important to know the ethnic identity of this man? I thought the "what are you" question was an appropriate approach in asking another ethnically ambiguous-looking person, "What are you?" because this same question had been asked of me my entire life. I didn't understand until later that what he was trying to tell me was that it was not about his skin color. It was more about who he is and not what he appears to be. After this encounter, I realized that it wasn't so much that his skin color and combination of stereotypical racial features is what intrigued me the most, but it was the person that he showed me that was more intriguing than any race category could have been. I have been blessed with the ability to witness firsthand both sides of a black and white world. I see the differences between a white man in today's society and a black woman in today's society, and I've experienced the cultures associated with each of those groups. Essentially, both of my parents are American. However, the difference comes with the perception of what it means to be black compared to white in America. As a multiracial woman, I feel as if I have been tasked in acting as a bridge between the two races. But that task has less to do with race and more to do with how we are to approach and interact with one another in spite of it. Now, with all of the stereotypical racial stereotypes associated with each race, festers a threshold of fear that one must cross in order to escape the initial tyrants of subconscious prejudice. Now, how do we get past these? And I'm not calling anyone a racist. However, because we live in a world whose history involves a lot of racial discrimination, I don't think it's any question that even if we don't mean to, sometimes our thoughts can be influenced by racial, ethnic, and cultural stereotypes. But then again, how do we get past these? How do we look further than skin deep and surpass even the slightest fears of our differences? Well, given that I have lived with two different racial families, I can give some advice as to how. I know that I am a particularly light woman, and I have noticed that this gives me a sort of advantage in instances that are highly dominated by white people. Living with my father's family and growing up in that environment, I have become aware of things such as music, food, table manners, and even conversations which are appropriate in this environment. And in being half black, I am given a certain social acceptance that allows me to be relatable to the black community and the minority identity as a whole. I can relate to one black experience, one. And this allows me a relatability that to all other black people. But then I also experience a sort of hostility from both groups. On one hand, I am too dark and out of place, or my hair isn't straight enough to fit in with white peers. I am shunned from having conversations which make colorblind white people uncomfortable. And on the other hand, I am too light, not black enough, a house slave, a pet to the white man, someone that shows up in rap music videos and on mainstream commercials because I am not dark, which is something that is deemed not beautiful in the world that we live in today. I hear things like, that's that light skin stuff, or you talk white. And the one that hits the hardest, you're not black, something which is expressed by both black and white people. But I do not let this discourage me from embracing the cultures in which I was raised in. I am both. And my advice to all of you is not to assume. Do not assume that someone has lived one lifestyle or one life experience based on their skin. Go forth and ask their name. Have a conversation. Ask those uncomfortable questions. And for those answering those uncomfortable questions, answer with your truth. Each of our experiences are unique to the self, and not one of them should reflect on an entire group of people. It is okay to be intrigued by someone's racial identity, someone's racial differences. But it is not okay to approach them as if they were only these things. Our identity is deeper than our skin. And when we acknowledge the exterior as well as the person on the interior, we are encouraging inclusivity. And then when we encourage inclusivity, we are making reality a diverse reality for all people and opening up an abundance of opportunity for everyone. I want you to see my hair, to see the coils. I want you to see my gap, the combination of beige and brown that my skin takes on, and my freckles. But then I want you to hear me, listen and learn, instead of assuming. My ethnicity is very much a part of my identity, but it is not the only part. Some that think that my racial identity is interesting thinks that this makes my character as such. But this is not true. It is who I am that will intrigue you far more than my skin ever could, because in learning about who I am, you will realize that I do not fit the stereotype. You will realize that as a multiracial woman, despite stereotypical popular belief, I am not confused. I know exactly who I am. I am Sierra, born and raised in Arlington, Texas, an American. I am a multiracial woman. I am a sister and a daughter, a student and an athlete. My spirit is as free as the coils in my hair. I am empathetic and I am very dramatic. Both of my exterior and my interior characteristics make up my identity, and all are inclusive. Not one of them can stand alone and define me. All of these pieces make up who I am. So when you meet someone, when you see someone different than you, think not about what they are, and instead ask, who are you? Thank you.